Hello everyone, hope all of you are fine. Beta, today we will discuss last topic of chapter 15 and name of the chapter is Framing the Constitution, right? So till now we have discussed various topics that how the power was divided, and with that we discussed about the reservation system. We also discussed about the objective resolution and defining rights, but the today's topic is related to the language. Like while framing the constitution, various meetings were held within the members of constituent assembly, and which language will be the official language of India or national language of India. This was also very important topic that was discussed in the constituent assembly. So today we will discuss about this topic, the language of the nation. Now beta, while framing the constitution, various question was there, like how could the nation be forged when people in different regions spoke different languages, and even each associated with its own cultural heritage. As you know, in India, in every state different languages are spoken, and every language has its cultural heritage also. So how could people listen to each other or they connect each other if they didn't know each other's language? So there should be a common language for them. And within the constituent assembly, the language issue was debated over many months and often generated intense arguments. It means to fix up the language of India, it was not an easy task for the constituent assembly. So by the 1930s, the Congress had accepted that Hindustani ought to be the national language. As you know, beta, till from 1930 till that time, now the demand of independence that was growing very fast, right? So that is why various issues were also discussed, and even Mahatma Gandhi felt that everyone should speak in a language that common people could easily understand. And Hindustani language that we are talking about, that was a mixture, that was a blend of Hindi and Urdu, and it was a popular language of a large section of the people of India. And even it was a composite language enriched by the interaction of diverse culture, as we have read that it was a mixture of Hindi and Urdu. So over the years it had incorporated words and terms from very many different sources and was therefore understood by people from various regions. Because now in Hindustani language various words were also used, and even this language it was spoken by diverse cultures. So over the years it had incorporated words, and this multicultural language, Mahatma Gandhi thought it would be the ideal language for communication between diverse communities. And even it could unify Hindus and Muslims also. It will unite Hindus and Muslim and people of the north and south. But from the end of the 19th century, however, Hindustani as a language had been gradually changing. Continuous changes were there in this Hindustani language, and as communal conflicts deepened. As you know, in 1905, Bengal was partitioned on the basis of religion. So from that time, communal conflicts deepened, and Hindi and Urdu also started growing apart. Means जो इन दोनों language का mixture था, now it was also separating. On the one hand, there was a move to Sanskritize Hindi, purging it on the all words of Persian and Arabic origin. बेटा अब जो हिंदी की बात हो रही थी, that was a Sanskritized हिंदी, जो हिंदी हमारी संस्कृत से origin हुई है, and जो वर्ड से पर्शियन या अरेबिक origin के, those were separated from the Hindi language. On the other hand, Urdu was being increasingly पर्शियनाइज्ड. बेटा अब जो उर्दू लैंग्वेज थी उसमें पर्शियन वर्ड्स यूज़ किए जा रहे थे. एज अ कॉन्सिक्वेंस लैंग्वेज बिकेम एसोसिएटेड विद द पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ रिलीजियस आइडेंटिटीज. लाइक हिंदी बिकेम द लैंग्वेज ऑफ हिंदू and this Persian Urdu, this became the language of Muslim community. So Mahatma Gandhi, however, retained his faith in the composite character of Hindustani. Mahatma Gandhi still want that Hindustani should be the national language. Now the next topic is a plea for Hindi. Plea for Hindi, beta. Now few people they gave idea that Hindi should be the national language or official language. But as you know, like in India, if we go to south, those people they don't understand Hindi at present also. So that is why it also created a lot of conflicts. In one of the earliest session of the Constituent Assembly, R.V. Dhulekar, he was a congressman from the United Provinces. He made an aggressive plea that Hindi be used as the language of the constitution making. When told that not everyone in the assembly knew the language, then as you know, so many assembly members were there, and those people they belong to the different categories in different states, and they spoke different languages, the members of Constituent Assembly. So on the plea of R.V. Dhulekar, like when he gave the idea that the language of constitution making that should also be Hindi. So now people oppose it, that no, so many people they don't understand it. So then Dhulekar reverted people who are present in this high house to fashion a constitution for India and do not know Hindustani are not worthy to be members of this assembly. Means whosoever assembly members are there, if they are not, they don't understand the Hindustani language, then they must not be the member of that constituent assembly. So they better leave. So as the house broke up in commotion over these remarks, as you know, these remarks were very harsh. So Dhulekar proceeded with this speech in Hindi, and on this occasion, peace in the house was restored through Jawaharlal Nehru's intervention. But the language issue continued to disrupt proceedings and agitate members over the subsequent 3 years. So beta for continuously 3 years, this was the main issue to be discussed, that which language will be the national language of India. Almost 3 years later, on 12 September 1947, Dhulekar's speech on the language of the nation once again sparked off a huge storm. By now, the Language Committee of the Constituent Assembly had produced its reports and had thought of a compromise formula to resolve the deadlock between those who advocated Hindi as a national language and those who opposed it. As you know, when any idea is proposed and few people are against it and other people are in favor of it, then we are to find a midway solution. And the same thing was done by the Constituent Assembly. It had decided, but not yet formally declared, that Hindi in the Devanagari script would be the official language, but the transition to Hindi would be gradual. Now they declared that Hindi that is written in the Devanagari script, you are well aware, and it would be the official language, but this transition, this change, it will be gradual, it will not immediate change. For the first 15 years, English would continue to be used for all official purposes, and each province was to be allowed to choose one of the regional languages for the official work within the province. So all these ideas were given, and which were useful also. And by referring to Hindi as the official rather than the national language, the language committee of the Constituent Assembly hoped to ruffle emotions and arrive at a solution that would be acceptable to all. Now, this solution was forwarded by the language committee of the Constituent Assembly. अभी हमने इसमें क्या समझे बेटा? Now that for coming 15 years, the English will be the official language, and this change, the acceptance of Hindi language, it will be a gradual process. It will not be a immediate process. And in every state, those people, they can follow their regional language also. Dhulekar was not one who liked such an attitude of reconciliation. He wanted Hindi to be declared not an official language but a national language. He attacked those who protested that Hindi was being forced on the nation and mocked at those who said in the name of Mahatma Gandhi that Hindustani rather than Hindi ought to be the national language. So still this Constituent Assembly member Dhulekar, he wanted to be Hindi, it should not be only the official language, it should be the national language of India. So, what particularly perturbed many members was the tone in which Dhulekar was arguing his case. Means the way he was presenting his idea, those were very harsh. And several times during his speech, the President of the Assembly, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, interrupted Dhulekar and told him, I do not think you are advancing your case by speaking like this. But Dhulekar continued nonetheless. Now the next topic, that is the fear of domination. A day after Dhulekar spoke, Shrimati G. Durgabai, she was from Madras, explained her worries about the way the discussion was developing for the language. Durgabai informed the house that the opposition in the south against Hindi was very strong, and the opponents feel perhaps justified that this propaganda of Hindi cuts at the very root of the provincial language. अब बेटा हम तमिलनाडु में जाते हैं, why those people they will converse in Hindi language, and even those people they are not comfortable with Hindi language. So yet this lady Durgabai, she along with many others had obeyed the call of Mahatma Gandhi and carried on Hindi propaganda in the south, braved resistance, started schools and conducted classes in Hindi. Now beta schools and classes, those were started to be conducted in Hindi language. Now, but what was the result of that? Beta, she was shocked to see this agitation against the enthusiasm with which we took to Hindi in the early years of the century. She had accepted Hindustani as the language of the people, but now that language was being changed. Words from Urdu and other regional languages were being taken out, and any move that eroded the inclusive and the composite character of Hindustani. So at that time the discussion became very conflictful, and many members appealed for a spirit of accommodation, and even a member from Bombay, Shri Shankar Rao Dev, stated that as a congressman and a follower of Mahatma Gandhi, he had accepted Hindustani as the language of the nation. But he warned, if you want my wholehearted support, you must not do now anything which may raise my suspicion. Because बेटा जो हिंदुस्तानी या हिंदी को अडॉप्ट करने का आइडिया था, it was forwarded by Mahatma Gandhi, and at that time Mahatma Gandhi, he was the main leader, he was the main freedom fighter. So that is why no one opposed this idea. But with that they won also. Like T.A. Ramalingam Chetiyar from Madras emphasized that whatever has to be done, it should be done with the caution. and the cause of Hindi would not be helped if it was pushed too aggressively. Means it should not be implemented so quickly. So the fears of the people, even if they are unjustified, had to be allayed, and at that time their bitter feelings will be left behind. So when we want to live together and form a united nation, there should be mutual adjustment and no question of forcing things on people. So we even in the constitution cannot form any language on the people, that the people will speak this language. So otherwise there will be no use of democracy, right? So this was the topic. In this chapter we have read about the various issues, those were discussed intensively while framing the constitution. So hope all of you have understood the topic. Thank you and have a nice day.